101. We're going to be going over our basic accounting principles as well as the chart of accounts and setting up different accounts and different funds. You know, it is just kind of a beginner's course. So, you know, if you have any questions, we're happy to help you. So just first things first, introductions. My name is Taylor. I'm a software support technician here at Concordia Technology Solutions, and I've been here for about 2 years. I'm really enjoying my job, and if you guys need to contact me directly, please feel free to use the contact information that you see here on your screen. I'll be happy to talk to you. With me is going to be Jordan Bogart and Rod Kyles. They're going to be in the chat support, so all phones and microphones have been muted. But if you have any questions, just feel free, just put a question in there, and whatever they don't get to, I'll be more than happy to answer it at the end of this webinar. So just to be sure, if this is a wonderful webinar and you want more, then my name is Taylor. And if you have any criticism or complaints, then my name is Jordan. So just as a very light overview, our class agenda is mostly just going to be me going over concepts, discussing them in a little more detail. Then we'll be going through a quiz, but it's not graded. I won't send it to your pastor. And then there'll be that Q&A session. So, you know, if all goes well, I'm going to try and wrap this up in about an hour and a half, but give or take, we'll just answer questions however they come. So of those concepts that we're going to be going over, fund-based accounting principles, which is what Shepherd Staff operates under, as well as different account structures using major and minor groups, as well as more detailed categorization techniques if you have a bigger chart of accounts. We'll also be going into grouping just to make things easier to categorize. And we'll be going over our chart of accounts as well as the account types that you're able to use in Shepherd Staff and how to generate that chart of account report. So let's go ahead and get it started. This is a bit of a different webinar. There are a few more slides than usual. So I'm just going to be going over these concepts and then we'll be getting into the software. And in addition to that, I am going to turn off my webcam so that you guys can see the full effect. All right then, so first we have our accounting principles. So Shepherd Staff does use fund accounting, and by this logic, our funds are going to be any sort of separate accounting entity. So whatever the set of books are, it's going to be its own fund with its own accounts. So if you just have a small church, you most likely only need one. But if you had something like a daycare or a school attached to your church and you wanted those books to be completely separate, then you could create another fund if you need to. Since these are completely separate, any transfers between these funds are going to be considered loans that need to be paid back, or at the very least, gifts that need to be put in either as like a deposit or a check on either side. But basically, you're just acting as if it's just a whole other vendor if you needed to transfer. We do use the concept of finance years, and it's really just any consistency of 12 consecutive months. So you do have the option of however you want to organize your finance year. It can be a calendar year, which is the most frequent, or a non-calendar year for whatever reason that you need. And these are just a few examples. As long as it contains 12 months, then the finance year is however it is that you need it to be. In the event that you're using a non-calendar year, the year will always be referred to by the end date of the end year. So even if it is June of 2020 to May of 2021, it will be the 2021 finance year, according to Shepherd staff. We will be using double entry bookkeeping. So essentially, any sort of transaction, it's going to have at least two accounts involved where their debits and their credits balance. So anything that is taken out of a checking account or anything, essentially, it's going to also have an offset account used for tracking. So the offset account won't actually have money in it, but it will be used for tracking purposes. And here's just a small little chart of how each account type approaches the debits and credits, whether or not they increase or decrease. They will all have their corresponding offset as well if any sort of a transfer or transaction needs to be done. We do use cash accounting, so since congregations usually work on a cash basis, it's usually just more upfront. It does allow easier tracking on, how much money comes in and goes out. And it's easier to explain the balances as well to the congregation and the church council because it's just showing exactly where the money is flowing, not from an abstract or theoretical point. It's just telling you exactly what the action is. And it is safer since you won't run into cash flow problems when, a lot of accounts come due at once. So just to keep things from being overwhelming, cash accounting is one of the main principles that Shepherd staff operates under. And using this cash accounting system, we do have income accounts that are recorded and recognized whenever money is received. And then we also have expense accounts that record any money that has been spent. So I'll go ahead and exit out of this PowerPoint real quick. And this is our new login, our new login screen. It is remarkably different from the stained glass window of old, but mostly all of the utilities are still here. They're just usually in just in different places. So you do still have your user ID and your password. You can go ahead and enter that in if I know how to type. And next to the password, there is this eye icon if you ever needed to look at your password, and it will show it. They are by no means case sensitive, so just use it however you need. On the bottom left-hand corner, there's going to be the name of your church. And if anything looks just a little amiss, you can always click on here and it will tell you the location of your database as well as when it was last backed up and last optimized. So that's always interesting information. We always want to make sure we have a current backup and optimize it frequently. And we also have updates here, where if you click on here, it will let you know if there are updates available. It is important that we want to keep your version up to date as much as possible. We are constantly issuing out changes and features just to better your experience. So as of right now, I believe the 2021 July 10th release is the most up-to-date at the moment. We are working on an alpha version for our new contributions module, So that will be going into beta testing soon, and sometime next year, we'll be able to release that and show you the whole new interface. So it does still have the same utilities. It's just whether or not it's going to be right here on the login screen or if it's going to be inside the system due to database structure changes. Up here, you can click utilities. Here, you can also check for updates. You can optimize this database. Just everything needs a checkup every once in a while. So if you click on here, just whenever you have a chance, you can just optimize the database. It just does some double checks and just make sure everything is as it should be. If you find that you're not attached to the correct database, you can switch the database as well as use this switch button right here if you have multiple databases. If you needed to restore a database backup, then you can do so from here. You will need to be signed in. You will need to have your user ID and password in here like this in order to restore a backup. Otherwise, you'll get a little error message. But other than that, it's just straightforward and the same as if it was our previous versions. You also have the option to back up this database. That doesn't require you to be logged in or have your user ID in here. Just you can never have too many backups. And if you want to start from scratch, then you can also create a church database as well. So once we go ahead and get into it, once we go ahead and log in, we do have these new toolbars, and we do have all of the modules here, and any utilities that you didn't see on the login screen, most likely you'll be able to find them up here. Usually for any sort of program settings or security, if you needed to create new users, then that would be up here. We have different tools, different utilities. If any of your window sizes or anything look a little wonky and you want to just reset those, then you can do that from here. So we are going to be focusing on the finance module. It has not been rewritten just yet. We are in the middle of a multi-module rewrite. And the finance module is going to be the last module that we rewrite. So if there's any features that you're interested in adding to the finance module, or you definitely want to make sure that these features are included, just feel free, just send me an email. I'll put it in as feedback. I can't guarantee anything as far as a feature being included or excluded, but I do know our development team very much greatly appreciates your feedback and reviews everything, and they will consider it on whether or not they're able to enter it into that new rewrite. So when you open up the finance module, a lot of things are popping up. If you don't want all of these pop-ups to show up, you can go up here to desktop and you can uncheck whatever it is that you don't want to show on startup. Like if you're not interested in the to-do list, you can uncheck that, and then this window won't pop up the next time you open up finance. Here we have our I want to window. This will be going away with the rewrite in favor of like a drop-down menu for actions. But for right now, we still have it, and this is just offers you some shortcuts, so that if you just need to get in, just do one thing, then you can just save yourself just a few clicks and just go straight there. In addition, there's also the church dashboard here. You do have this dashboard for membership, attendance, contributions, and finance. When you open up finance, naturally that is the tab that it's open up to. And it shows you just kind of a glance on what's going on with your current fiscal year. And it's just always nice to make sure that everything is looking as it should. If something looks profoundly different, then that always kind of gives you a heads up that you need to check out something. And the dashboard, as well as the chart of accounts to your left, that's taken up most of the screen, it is going to be operating on whatever the current fiscal year is. So if you ever need to know exactly what your fiscal year is, you can go down here to where there's this little green box right here where it says 2020. If you click on here, it will tell you what the fiscal year is for these current accounts. So, you know, if you need to run the year-end utility, this will just let you know that, hey, you're not in the new year, you need to run that, we need to move forward. Now I did go over funds and how they are their own set of books. If you go up here to the F icon, you can see your list of funds. Usually people only need one. However, if you do have a new daycare or just anybody that you're holding books for but are going to be completely separate from your church books, then you could always go up here to funds, click add, and then enter in that fund name. And then you'll be able to start from scratch. You will be able to create your chart of accounts just as you need. If you ever need to know what fund you're looking at, right next to the fiscal year, you can always see which fund you're currently looking at. And if you ever need to change it, you should be able to just double click it here and you'll be able to select another fund if you so need. Since they are separate books, they are profoundly different from the contribution fund. I'll go into a little more detail in that a little later, but in contributions, funds are just anything that you need to donate to that you want to categorize. Funds here, they are going to be just a list of books. So I do apologize, it is the same phrasing, but they are definitely different between modules. Here you can see your chart of accounts. You can see different areas of your fund, and you can also look at your account tree. So right here you have all of your types of accounts, and if you ever needed to, you could use these arrows right here to expand and show exactly how your chart of accounts is set up, how it's organized, and how it's grouped as well. So that is what we're going to go into next. Going to go back to our PowerPoint. And we have a specific structure for these account numbers. So as an example for a 9-digit account number, you know, each portion of these account numbers, they're going to represent a different aspect of the account. So the first one here, you see 01 in its own little box, that is going to be the fund number. So if you have multiple funds, then you'll know right away when you look at an account exactly what fund it belongs to. After that fund number, there's going to be the account type. So it is assigned according to whatever type of account we're dealing with. And so you'll also be able to tell that directly from just their account number, exactly where and what it is. Then there are major groups, which are kind of just categories for different accounts. You know, normally, sorry, I just completely blanked. But say if a large congregation wanted to use major groups for something big like building maintenance. So it is pretty general. But then, in addition to the major group, the next number will end up being the minor group, which is just a subgroup or a subcategory. So say if you had a building maintenance major group, then you could probably separate those into 2 minor groups for maybe exterior care and then interior care. So then each minor group would have individual accounts detailing the different items and accounts in those groups. So if a congregation sees its expenses rising, then it might first see that the major group increased. So then they'll be able to just really figure out where an unusual increase or decrease is coming from, just to make it easier for you to navigate your chart of accounts. And finally, there's the sequence number. This is essentially just telling you what makes this account unique. So if you have multiple accounts in your minor group, then you know, they're just going to have different sequence numbers just to make sure that they are all unique for your viewing. So that full account number will end up looking like this. So then we can actually start working on our creating our accounts. So in creating our chart of accounts, we're going to need to start with what types of accounts we want. So the first one would be our asset account. Basically, anything that your congregation owns. There are two types of assets. You can have just the current assets or any sort of monetary assets, like, you know, a bank account or any sort of checking or savings accounts, any CDs, and any stocks. So if it's money that you have, then you do have those monetary assets. You also have the option, it is optional, it's by no means required, to have fixed or non-monetary assets as well, like buildings, land, or even just equipment, like certain vehicles, or if someone donated a lawnmower of some sort. If you just had that as an asset and you wanted to show it on your chart of accounts, then you do have that option. To add an account, you have two different options. You could go up here to the account grid and click add. And if you select add, then it will ask you what account that you want to add. And you can select asset. If you click OK, then this little pop-up window will allow you to basically determine what that account number is going to be. So say I'm going to have a new checking account just for youth groups. So if I wanted youth group checking, and as of right now, they don't have a beginning balance. And then I just want to put it in specific places in the chart of accounts. So say maybe if I use the drop-down menu and add it to the central trust fund, or the central trust group, then it will be in that main group. Then in the minor group, we can choose whether or not we want checking or savings. And then since you can see here that there is no number one sequence, as it's already been taken up by the central trust checking right here. So we'll just choose number 2 as our sequence, just to make it unique. You also have two other ways that you can categorize these accounts, and that's by church body or responsibility. These are completely optional. You're by no means required to do anything with these. It's just an extra way that you can organize if you had a specific church body or department that was in charge of this account and you wanted to put that on the chart of accounts, make sure that it is in reports, then you can put that on there. If you wanted to assign responsibility for this account to a specific person, so say for this youth group, you want to assign it to the group leader, you could choose that. And you could click on here in this little pencil icon, and it will tell you if there's anything that's reserved, which naturally 00 is. So we'll need to change that and put in 01. And then you can enter in a name. So say I am the youth leader. We can assign that to Taylor Brown. So then once we save that, when we look at the chart of accounts, if something's just looking just a little funky with this group checking, then we know that we can definitely contact Taylor and she'll let us know if there's something amiss. For any asset, it does have the option to be monetary or non-monetary. And if it is going to be a bank account, then you're going to want to check this. This will allow you to write checks from this account. And you can also choose to override any check numbers. If you wanted to start from a particular number, then you can. So once that asset is created, we'll click OK. And you'll see that it has been added to the chart of accounts. You also have the option, in addition to this account grid, you can add one directly from the account tree. So say I wanted to add a checking account for the Central Trust. If you select that minor group, and you go over here to this little starburst icon, then you can go ahead and create a new account in this particular place. So it will automatically fill in, the fund, the account, as well as the major group and minor group since you had that selected. So just to save you just a little bit of time, then maybe you would prefer to create accounts from within this tree just to save you just a couple more clicks. If this was done in error, no worries. You can always just change it however it is that you need. Nope, I'm not going to save those changes. But now that we have that asset, we can go on to our next account. And that is our liability account. So basically any sort of amount that we owe, it's going to be in the liability account. It can be short-term as well as long-term debt. Certain short-term debts can be things like payroll taxes, healthcare savings accounts, or just offerings for other congregations. So if you're donating to another congregation, then it would be considered a liability as it is making us in debt. For long-term debt, things like mortgages, loans, or even car loans, if you do have a vehicle that you need to insure and have loans for, then you have that option to create a liability account for it. Now back here on the chart of accounts, you do have the option to choose what type of account you have. If you want to expand it all, you would click this little green arrow, just expand everything. And here you can see that the liabilities, we have two major groups, one for payroll tax deductions and the other for payroll deductions. These might be just slightly different, so you might want to just separate those and put them in separate categories as this person has. In addition to adding, you also have the option that if you wanted to select an account, you can go down here to this pencil icon and you can make changes as well. It is recommended that any sort of beginning balance, if it doesn't have a beginning balance, once you add when you add the account to begin with, if it doesn't have a beginning balance, we do recommend using a transfer account to move those funds over. As changing the beginning balance on any of these accounts can definitely affect previous years as well as other beginning balances. Then we also have, after I click through these that you've already seen, we have equity accounts. So most people know the the basics in accounting equations, and that would be that assets equal liability plus equity. So anything that you have equals your debts plus what you have already. And by that same logic, you can know that assets minus liabilities will equal equity. Most equity accounts are not required in Shepherd Staff, as the balance sheet report, it already kind of does that accounting equation for you as the fund balance. So unless a trained CPA recommends it, then you can just disregard this type of account. Some examples can be owner's equity, earned income, and since it's not required, we do recommend that you create these under the supervision of a CPA, just to make sure that everything financial-wise is as it should be. Mm-hmm. Then, in addition to the equity accounts, we have income accounts. So these are going to be what was previous was going to be the asset, the liability, and the equity. For the next three accounts, they're going to be offsets. So these are going to be purely for tracking, and you can use an income account to record just any sort of revenue that you had received during this current fiscal year. They are budgeted accounts, and examples can be just offerings that you receive, interest that you earn on bank accounts, or even something like rental property. And since it is a tracking offset, it is going to zero out at the end of the year whenever you run your year-end utility. So it's always important to make sure that you run your statement of income and expense, make sure everything is as it should be. If you need to transfer any funds out for fear of it zeroing out, then you would want to do that before running the year end, as it will just go straight back to zero and start over for the next year. In addition, we also have expense accounts, which record how monies are spent. We want to record everything that we get as well as whatever goes out. So these are also budgeted accounts, and examples can be salaries, any sort of materials that you need to purchase, any office supplies that you need to purchase for administration, or anything like postage or utilities as well. Very similar to the income account, it also zeroes out at the end of the year, so that once your expense account just racks up throughout the year, you make those final reports, and then for the new year, you just start straight over. And since these are budgeted accounts, I thought I would just go over just briefly how PowerPoint, why are you not working for me? Okay. Since income and expense accounts are budgeted, you can add budgets to them. And you can do that both from the account grid here by selecting a particular account. And right down here, you can see for fundraiser income, on the lower end of this window, you can see that there is a budget button and it's not grayed out, so you can select it and it will open up that budget. And you can use your own fiscal year, or you can add a fiscal year if you're just starting from scratch as far as budget is concerned. You can also project and copy from last year's budget as well. So you can add budgets for income and expense. You can do that from this account grid, and as you can also go down here, select it from your account tree, And if you select something, then down here you will see that you can both display the ledger, which you can also do from the account grid just by double clicking it, as well as adding a budget. So just two areas that you can do the exact same thing. It's just completely up to you what your preference is. And in addition to those budgets, if you do select them in this tree, you can see the actuals as well. So that is important always for a glance. You can always just choose this tree for that. And then finally, why do I keep doing this to myself? After the expense account, we have our final account, which are called dedicated accounts. And these are monies that are reserved specifically for a very specific purpose, like a person's memorial. And these are not budgeted by any means due to the fact that they carry over into the next year. So even when you run the New Year bank reconciliation, the New Year utility to move forward as to the next fiscal year, that balance in this dedicated account will carry over. So if you wanted any sort of balance to carry over instead of maybe a income or an expense account, you might want to use a dedicated account. It will act mostly as an offset to an asset account and will be reported on the balance sheet as a liability. So let's see. Before I do that review, I did not mean to rhyme, but here we are. Just want to make sure that I done everything. Yep. All right then. So before our quick review, there was just a couple more things that I wanted to show you in the software first. And back here into the finance. So we did go over how contribution funds and finance funds, they are different. However, the contribution module and the finance module, they do have connections. So if we exit out of finance just real quick, yes, we want to exit. And we go up here to contributions. Then you can look at all of the funds by looking at the second F icon. So if you choose this, these are all of the contribution funds that people can dedicate their offerings to or pledge or etc. With these funds, most of these offerings are going to be on your ledger. So just to save you a step, if you go into a fund or edit it, when you create a fund record in contributions, you do have the option to attach it to a bank account. So you can use the drop-down menus to choose the bank account where whatever is donated to this particular fund in contributions, then that money will be created as a deposit to this checking account so that you'll be able to just reconcile things just with a few less clicks. You also have the option for this offset account as well, just to make sure that everything is tracked as it should be in the finance module, just to save you that just small bit of time. In fact, if you have a batch for offerings, and see here I have 585 here, and I went to post it, yes, I want to continue. If I went to post it, then it does give you the option to create a deposit in finance. So if I wanted to check this and say, yes, I want the deposit date to be for whatever date it is that you need, then we can click on that and we'll be able to find that deposit in the deposit register, where you'll be able to attribute it to the account without actually having to manually enter it in. After exiting out of contributions, the one other thing that I wanted to go over real quick, that was to look at your chart of accounts. You can definitely see the whole structure as it is right here. And directly from this, this view, you can print your chart of accounts report. If you click here, then it will open up, it will open up your reports window, where you can choose between different funds if you have multiples. You can also filter it according to just a specific group. You could pick and choose, or you could use a range. So say if I just wanted just the first groups, anything that was not attributed to a group, then I could add that here, click OK, and then it would only show those particular major groups. You can do the same thing for minor groups and for responsibility and church body. So it's another way for these, for your chart of accounts to just be organized, as well as being able to be filtered to whatever report it is that you need. We do have different formats. Typically it is 2 columns. If we preview it, it will always go to a preview before sending it to your printer, so don't worry. You can definitely see what it is that it's going to be reporting on. You can always close, and then you can change things as you need, even if it's just standard. And if you wanted to go back and select all of your major groups, you can go back to that. If everything is supposed to be shown, including active accounts, you can also include inactive accounts if you need to report that. Once you report on that, you can see all of the responsibility codes, the church body codes, just exactly how this chart of accounts is structured. This would be a good way for you to print out and just kind of review how everything is structured if you needed to make any changes. And just I just find it generally helpful. In addition to this print button down here, you can access the chart of accounts, exit out of these real quick, by going up here to reports or to the report icon. We just have multiple ways for you to access these reports. And you can find it right here, and selecting it right here, it will open up the exact same chart of accounts window as you did from the chart of accounts tree. And I do believe that other webinars are going to be going over these reports in depth, but if there are any quick concerns, just feel free to just ask. So just as a quick review, a single set of books or a fund, most churches will only have one. But if you're considering creating a second fund, you know, instead of creating something that's completely separate from your original set of books, you might want to consider creating an additional dedicated account, just so then it can track its own, track its own amount, as well as carry over to the next year, but you would still be able to include that in your chart of accounts with all the other accounts that you have. So, you know, as a rule of thumb, really simpler may be better. So you don't need to overcomplicate your chart of accounts. honestly, it's always easier to add the accounts later than to just delete them and start over. You know, it's never fun if you have to, you know, move a whole bunch of money through journal entries just so that your chart of accounts just looks more the way that you need. There are 6 different account types. The first one is asset. Liability is the second. Then we have equity, which is optional on whether or not you want to use it. Then there's income, which is number 5. We don't have account type 4. I don't remember why, but we just don't. And then we have expense as number 6, and then dedicated as number 7. So these account types and their account type numbers, this is what you're going to be looking at after the first fund number in the 9-digit account number. This will tell you exactly what type of account it is. Then you can group your accounts just any way to help organize things into categories. So you could use 4 types of groupings. You can use major, which is more of a general category, and then can go into further detail using minors, church body, and the responsibility codes. Then we'll be going over just a small quiz. I'm not going to report you to your pastor, no worries, but I just wanted to reiterate some things that I've gone over and just making sure that, that those concepts are covered. And then we'll just start working on the Q&A. So the first poll, my question is a fund in the finance module, is it the same as a fund in the contributions module? Looks like we almost have half. All right, I'll go ahead and close that. And the answer is false. So they do use the same word for fund, but they are different between the different modules. So funds for contributions, those are just things that you donate to, things that you pledge for, that you notate exactly where you want your offerings to go. A fund in the finance module is a collection of accounts. So it's going to have its own chart of accounts and will be considered its own kind of separate entity. And most of the time you'll only need one unless you have multiple congregations or entities in your church building. The only time that you might need it is just if you have 2 separate books. So our next poll, if I wanted to create a bank account, which one would we use? All right, looks like the majority voted on A. The asset account would be what you use to keep track of your bank balance. Some people did say dedicated or income. You can use that in conjunction with an asset account if you wanted to track specific spending habits or income habits. But in and of itself, if you have a bank account, it is going to be considered a monetary asset. By that logic, if the church takes out a loan, what account are we going to use? All right then, looks like most everyone has voted. Oh, we still got a few more trickling in. All right then. Go ahead and close that. And the answer is, it is a liability account. So you might use expense as an offset account for specific reasons, but if it is considered a debt or something that remains to be paid, then you definitely want to use a liability account as the offset for all of your transactions in regards to that. So in order to decrease the amount owed, you would need to credit it, I believe. Now, what types of accounts do you think budgets are able to be assigned to them? All right then. I got a variety of responses, but the answer is going to be income and expense. For asset, liability, and equity, those are accounts that actually have money or debts within them. The income and expense, those are for tracking purposes and are used as offsets for those other accounts to track exactly how much is earned and how much is spent. And as such, those two are the only ones that are able to have budgets attached. Things like dedicated accounts, they carry over to the next year. So it doesn't zero out like an income and expense does. So it doesn't need to be budgeted either. So it's always important to make sure that your budget is being adhered to by looking at your statement of income and expense. And last but not least, I feel like I just spoiled it, but that's okay. If I have a dedicated account and I run that year-end utility, zero out those expenses, those income accounts. But what about the dedicated account? All right. righty. To that question, the answer is true. It will carry its balances over into the next fiscal year. So whenever you run that utility, it's not going to be zeroed out like the income and expense accounts are. So that's kind of the end of my spiel. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to just go ahead and put them into the question box, and I'm going to be reviewing them real quick. Let's see. For setting up budgets, do you need to do this individually for each line item? You do have the option. It does look like Jordan here did answer you, but it can be entered individually, or you can use a budget import process. In fact, let me just go ahead and exit out. Let's see. And I can show you just that. If you go back into the account grid and you choose your income or expense and you choose budget, then you can select the financial year. If you don't see it, say, hey, I don't have it for 2021. Even if you're in the fiscal year 2020, you can add budgets as early as you want. That won't be a problem. So if I wanted to add a 2021 budget, I would go over here to add, and it would say, yes, are you sure about this fiscal year? If it doesn't allow you to use the fiscal year, you'd use this drop-down menu to search for it. If we click OK, then you could either put in a beginning balance. I lied. You could either put in balances individually into each month, or you can go to this this button, this project and copy. You click on here, then you can calculate according to either how it was last year, if you wanted to copy the budgets. If you wanted to copy the actuals and just kind of tweak them here and there, then you have that option. You can project and it just kind of tell you, give you a kind of an idea, or you can do equal monthly amounts. If you click on here, then you could just put in your total budget. So if I had $1,200 and I said, hey, I want you to split that up equally amongst all the months, and click OK, then automatically that budget has been dispersed between each month. You can also import budgets. Let's see, by using the budget import. And of course, before running any utility, it recommends that you run a backup. And then you can choose this and upload a spreadsheet. If you had a worksheet that you already had in Excel, then you can also load the spreadsheet, change or determine the layout and the fiscal year, and then you can import those budgets directly into Shepherd Staff, and then you can go in individually for each account if you wanted to just kind of tweak it a little bit. So good question. Let's see. So QuickBooks does allow for easier budgeting. I do apologize for that, but I can add in feedback for our development team to take a look at QuickBooks so that hopefully maybe within the rewrite, there will be a more upfront budgeting view, which considering the interface between membership, attendance, and the new contributions that's going to be coming out, I feel like it's going to be very likely that it is going to be much more upfront than it is from this current grid, but I can't make any promises at the moment. And then what is the church body code for? It can be anything, just basically any sort of categorization method. It can be used for certain departments. It can be used for certain parts of the year. If you had multiple church bodies or entities, then you could establish that certain accounts are completely under their control. And just an easier way to track who is responsible as well as who can make those changes. So that's a good question as well. Let's see. Right, and it looks like Jordan has answered them as well. Are there any other questions that I could help with? I mean, I'll just go ahead and put this information up. So in the event that, we end this webinar and you just had a quick question, feel free to reach out to me directly, or you can reach out to us via support@cts.cph.org, or you can give us a call at 1-800-346-6120, and we'll be happy to take your call. We'll be happy to help you create your chart of accounts, help you reorganize. Just let us know and we're happy to help. So thank you so much for watching me today, and I hope you guys have a good one. Thank you so much.